The holidays have never been a good time for me. My dad left when I was 10. Yes, it's tragic, but nothing out of the norm. He left us on Christmas Eve and never came home. Said he was going out for some wrapping paper, and that was the last we saw of him. For 25 years, my mother had learned to deal with this. A slow process for a woman so much in love. Dad was everything to her, to all of us. Growing up without a father was tough. But again, nothing out of the norm. Lots of my friends growing up only had one parent. You were more abnormal if your parents had stayed together. At least that was how we all coped with it. Mom died 2 years ago, and now I was in charge of hosting the family Christmas at her old house. The house that was Mom and Dad's so many years ago. None of us wanted to come back to a place with so many bad memories, but we all knew it's what she would have wanted. If she was still alive. My younger brother and sister were late again this year, which is typical. I could never count on either of them to be on time for anything. None of us were great cooks, so we opted to have pizza delivered. We ate in silence, and then spent the next hour and a half trimming the tree. We all plopped down on the couch, and dust spurted out from the cushions. "It's freezing in here, Joe," my brother Danny said. "Anyone know how to start a fire?" "I don't," Jen said, and both turned and looked at me. The eldest sibling gets all the stupid jobs. It must be some kind of intergalactic law. There was already wood in the house, so we gathered what we could and tried to get a nice warm fire going. We weren't having much luck, and smoke filled the room, and I fiddled with the fireplace and realized something was blocking the airflow. "This old piece of crap house," Jen said. "Doesn't surprise me nothing works round here." She was right. Mum had never bothered to fix anything since Dad left, including the fireplace. Danny and I had offered several times to fix things around her place, but she wouldn't hear of it. She wanted everything kept just how it was, and believed someday Dad would come back. "I think I know what's wrong," I said as I continued working. That's when I smelled something awful, and heard a rattling sound. A corpse. Now a pile of dry bones and clothes in a Santa suit. Hit the bottom with a thud. I jumped back and clamped my hands over my mouth. Jen screamed, and Danny dropped to the floor while letting out painful sobs. A red velvet bag came down next, filled with gifts, labeled for each of us. Turns out Dad came back after all.
I first noticed the ornament while calling my ex-wife in England from my mother-in-law's, her mother's body lying in the other room. It was high-shine red, adorned with crown-like lace of silver and gold, encrusted with clear gems and white pearls, perfectly centered on her Christmas tree. I wanted to touch it the moment I saw it. Sniffling over the receiver pulled me back to the conversation. "You need to come back," I said. "I can't do this on my own." She'd left me alone with our kids and her invalid mother. 15 months of hospital visits, bills, and bedside care of her mom, without so much as a text. "She follows where her heart leads," my mother-in-law would say. "Please forgive her." My resentment grew, though, as my Facebook wall exploded with smiling photos of she and her lover on their wedding day, as did my weariness with each sleepless night and the sound of my sobbing children asking when Mommy would come home. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she sighed. "I'll be on the next flight." After the paramedics, coroner, and mortician left, I went straight back to the tree. The bauble was beautiful and glowed as if illuminated from within. I was owed this, at least this. Before I knew it, the ornament was in my hand, and I was driving home to break the news to the kids. That night, I placed the ornament on my own tree. It wasn't until I leaned in, closely examining the exquisite craftsmanship, that I saw it. In the room behind me, over my shoulder, was a black shape in the bauble's reflection. I turned around and saw nothing unusual. Back in the reflection, the towering shape turned toward me, revealing a featureless white face. It cocked its head and stared at me with black holes. Paralyzed, I watched as it slowly glided toward me, pausing as it reached the sofa and looking down at my sleeping children. It rushed at them, and I whipped back around to see them soundly sleeping, exhausted after another evening spent crying. The shape was now missing from the reflection as well. I rubbed my eyes, shrugged, and carried the kids to bed. In the morning, they complained of being cold. Over the next several days, as I suffered through discovering my ex-wife's late pregnancy, the perfect smile of her new husband, and his own 2 kids, my children's fatigue grew. I'm not superstitious, but all the same, I threw the bauble away. The next morning, it was back on the tree where I first put it. I could think of nothing else to do. On Christmas night, as my ex-wife and her new family prepared to head back to England, I handed her one last gift. Just a little something to remember us all, I said. Inside the small wrapped package marked, "Do not open till back home," was another small note. "This will look great on your Christmas tree."
Emmanuel, Hebrew, meaning God is with us. I ran from one end of the hall to the other. They were close. Stay to the wall, stay to the wall. They came slithering around the corner, their white eyes staring blankly all around, their spiny tentacles seeming to smell the air like snakes. They knew something was there. As long as I stayed quiet, I'd be fine. That minute stretched into eternity. Finally, seeming to give up, they each screamed in unison. Off in the distance, similar screams echoed theirs. Then they left. I waited till they were out of sight and had heard them exit the building before I took a gasping, desperate breath. Jesus. How'd they develop tactics in less than 2 months? They're getting smarter. They know to divide into units, investigate, and report back. I'm gonna get caught. It's just a matter of time. I checked my bag. 1 water bottle, 3 cans of beans, and a small plush Santa that sang, O come, Emmanuel," when you squeezed it. The last one I held on to for sentimental reasons, and out of a pure lack of social interaction. I hadn't seen a living thing out here besides those nightmares running around for at least 10 days. Hell, I might be the last one for all I know. It all happened right around Christmas. Millions died in the first few weeks. I got up and slowly made my way to the ash-covered window. Through the filthy pane of glass, I could barely make out a group of those things heading due east. Now's my chance. I made my way down to the street as quietly as possible, almost tripping over the half-eaten corpse of what looked like a dog. Christ, those things will eat anything. Finally out on the street, I scanned the area. Maybe if I got to water, I could find a boat. Who knows if those things can swim? It was worth a shot. It's not like they'll miss me. Suddenly, I heard noise in an alley to my right. It was a big one. Tentacles like tree trunks, stood around 9 feet tall. It was moving towards me, but indecisively. A giant, quivering mass of tentacles flailing out in every direction, looking to catch something. Anything. Just gotta stay quiet. It came within 2 feet of me. I could feel the sweat start to pour down my face in bullets. The tentacles smelled the air. Just keep moving along. There's no one here. There's no one here. Finally, it started to move on. As relief flooded through my system, I leaned up against a wall. Suddenly, the strains of O Come, O Come Emmanuel started screaming out of my bag. I was done. It wheeled around and was on me in the width of a breath. I could hear myself laughing in all the pain and blood. Thinking back to how this all started. Thinking back on how the tentacles looked like tinsel in the right light. Thinking back on how the little ones started appearing everywhere. Kept multiplying and getting bigger. Thinking back to the first one, the largest one, crawling out from the endlessly ancient corners of darkness, its tentacles slowly but surely wrapping endlessly around the earth, claiming it. Emmanuel, God is with us. In the 2 millennia we spent pleading, praying, and singing for God's return to our small, vulnerable planet. We were stupid enough to think he was the only one listening.
This was in 1996. It must have been 3 or 4 in the morning. I heard something on the roof. A thunk, the jangling of sleigh bells, then the slow plodding of footsteps towards the chimney. Quickly I ran downstairs, careful not to wake my parents. Then I waited by the cookies and milk, hiding behind the couch. The jangling grew louder, echoing down the chimney. Thuds, scrapes, wind whistled. Dark soot fell and clicked off the cold coals. I remember looking down and seeing how hard my little fingers gripped the top of the couch. The creak of the leather, the whites of my knuckles. It's all stayed with me. I jumped as a black boot slipped out from the chimney and kicked up dust. The red of his suit was frayed, like the hem of a castaway's pants, and the color faded to a soft pink. Not like the mall Santa at all. The other boot fell. This one had a manacle crimped around it, so tight it had chopped through the boot and bit into the skin underneath. Then a length of chain dropped next to his foot and jangled into the hearth. It wasn't sleigh bells after all. He sat on his heels and stooped forward with a cascading crack of 24 joints. He pushed his face through the hanging stockings, threadbare hat hanging low, and strings of white, matted hair clinging all over his face. He emerged into my living room, short and emaciated, dragging a burlap sack blackened by soot. Santa? He saw me and stumbled in shock. The face, it just, I couldn't believe it. The deep wrinkles, the wiry beard, coated in sediment from infinite chimneys. The shape of it, too, not jolly and round, no, concave with hanging, sallow skin. He cowered away from me like a dog that had been kicked too many times, but I still caught his eyes. Small, impossibly black dots, darting away to look anywhere but back at me. He dragged his chained leg to the tree and began dropping gifts beneath it. Beautifully wrapped gifts, a facade covering the horror I was witnessing. There came a sudden tug on his chain and he moaned in fear, quickening his pace. Then the chain tightened and began reeling him in. He stretched frantically and took the cookies in hand, shoving his whole fist into his mouth, and chugged the milk so fast it streamed over the sides and onto his dirtied suit. A harder tug took his feet out from under him, and he smacked his face onto the carpet. With bewildered black eyes, he finally stared up at me, stretching out his hand. I remember the look he gave me. His whole ghostly visage, trembling in fear, and I can still hear the whimpering as he slid backwards into the fireplace and up the chimney. That whimpering wakes me up every Christmas Eve. I still believe in Santa Claus. I just wish I didn't. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Christmas collaboration. This was in the works for a couple of weeks. I started planning for it a couple weeks ago. It took me a couple of days to find the stories. Emmanuel by T.F.B. is actually written by T.F.B. He is an amazing writer, so go check him out on his channel. Everybody's channels will be in the description, as well as the channels for the people who did the music, which is Myuu and Lucas King. I just want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas, and if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you're having a good week regardless. And yeah, so a little update before this video ends. I will be taking a break until January 4th, but January 4th I'll be back with a Skinwalker video. So I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy that. This collab was a little shaky. There would be times where I didn't think it was actually going to happen because people weren't able to get, audio together. Mr.DarkReads was sick at some point, so he was like almost dropped out completely because he wasn't going to be able to do it, and I couldn't find anybody else in time. So until like 2 days ago, I didn't think this collab was actually going to happen, but I was trying my best to find people and try to find a way to make it happen, and it happened not exactly the way I wanted to, but it did. I did want one other person, my best friend John, on here to do a small little snippet, because I do like his narration voice. He just doesn't like doing it because he doesn't think he sounds good, but we all know he sounds good. Don't worry about it. Yeah, and he wasn't able to do it. He kept forgetting to do it, but it's fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was like a minute and a half of reading, so it's not like it's gonna detriment like what the collab was supposed to be. But I did want him on there. But I am so glad that I got the people on here that I did, and you guys have made this, even though you guys have only been around for a couple months, you guys have made this the best year of my life, and I can't thank you enough for being here and giving me this passion and this drive and this community to put my faith in, and have all this support, and you guys support each other. So like I said, this will be the last video of 2018. Let's go kick off 2019 with the best channel on YouTube. I'm not claiming to be that. I'm sorry. Anyways, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. If you don't celebrate anything during this time of year, have a good day. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next year.
Believe